In light of some of the Supreme Court's recent actions, I'd like to have a talk with you all about gender and marriage. We are going to get #real about gay rights in this video, so strap in for that. And the next video is about Naruto, FYI, so big things coming. Part 1. Why is everyone so scared of trans people? The short answer is that trans people are a mirror and what you see frightens you. The long answer is a lot of people, especially men in conservative spaces, believe that their gender entitles them to power, and if the gender is inherent, then the power is too. But if they have to acknowledge that gender maybe isn't inherent and is performative in any metric at all, it shakes the foundation. Because if they admit that gender isn't inherent, that means the power isn't inherent, and that's why a lot of them fear trans people, is it is a threat to power. They dislike someone who presents femme and acts masculine because the perceived contradiction means that the personality traits you associate with certain presentations aren't inherent to them. It makes you notice on some level that gender presentation is a choice and not a natural, coincidental, accidental expression of internal intrinsic personality traits. So, in some ways, the Supreme Court ruling that the sex on a passport has to match the birth certificate is more woke than you think. A fully passing trans woman, hair, nails, dress, no peen or nothing, walks up with a passport that says male, and the TSA agent has to be like, sure, whatever, because someone's presentation not matching their documents no longer means anything in particular other than that they might be trans. Mask Ambi rolls up with a passport that says F, and you just have to deal because legislating that won't take away the fact that trans people exist, and they've always been here, and they will still be here. The war on pronouns is just a desperate scramble at clinging to a gender hierarchy that afforded them power. It's the thing that buys them power, but also full of banal and miserable restrictions that they've pledged their lives to adhering to, so now we've got the sunk cost fallacy to contend with. The whole passport thing is a bit of a contradiction because it forces a confrontation with gender fluidity that many people would not otherwise have because many trans people pass. Make no mistake, however, this is a harmful government overreach and an attempt at social control. To force people to visually match the gender indicated when really your gender doesn't matter at all when it comes to airport security. Passports used to not have sex listed at all until 1976. So if we're really returning to 50s traditional family values, we should take it off altogether. It was really only added as a backlash to the women's rights movements and second-wave feminism, not to protect women like they claim it all is. This whole thing means a lot of trans people are going to have to wear disguises to match their passport designation and will be potentially subject to baseless scrutiny and searches. There's also the much simpler fact of people fearing what they don't understand. A lot of the rhetoric against trans people banks on people not knowing any trans people personally, which is common because trans people are such a small demographic of people. So you can make wild claims about the entire group and a lot of people will believe it because they have no real way of double checking that does not require them to go massively out of their way. They are an easy target to create a rhetorical boogeyman, a societal monster under the bed. This is all obviously false if you have any proximity to a trans person whatsoever, but like I said, they're betting on the fact that you don't. Trans people are being used as a political scapegoat, a means to an end for power. The American government is not helping its people, it's starving them, and demonizing outgroups as violent and then oppressing them is a feeble attempt at convincing the American people that they're actually doing anything worthwhile while they're not. Make no mistake, SNAP should have been funded even if the government was shut down. They are doing this on purpose. Sorry, we can't let people have food or a living wage, we were too busy shadowboxing the monster under the bed. This idea that trans people are violent criminals it's fantasy, it's completely baseless. Trans people do not commit violent crime at even equivalent rates to other demographics. They are just not a threat, and there's only so many of them in the first place. Not only am I okay with trans women being in my bathroom, I want them there. I would be devastated if they had to go anywhere else. They're cool. I like them. And don't even come at me with the trans people in sports thing. I'm tired of it. Okay, don't piss me off. First of all, trans people are not on the field, they're doing musical theater, okay? They're at the art club, band practice, the dolls are in the studio. So this literally applies to like 6 people in the first place. Second of all, who cares? Like actually who cares? IDGAF, who cares? Leave it to schools or sports leagues. Why would the government be involved whatsoever? What the hell? The whole thing hinges on a wild overvaluing of testosterone as a miracle hormone that it is not. Women naturally have testosterone also. It's not like the thing that only men have. Everybody has testosterone. And there's exaggerated biases about the superiority of the quote-unquote male physique. See ultra-endurance sports where women routinely beat out men. Cisgender, all the way down too, by the way. You'll also notice a lot of the fear-mongering is about trans women and not trans men, and that's because they view men as worth being and women as not worth being afraid of, and they don't view women as worth being, and they do view men as worth being afraid of, so it's a 2-for-1 misogyny special where they also don't believe in people's gender identities. There's an air of running around like a chicken with your head cut off to this desperate attempt at trying to maintain a system of gender, but the very fact that it requires so much maintenance at all is an admission of its artificiality. Being gender nonconforming as a woman consists of doing absolutely nothing. Not shaving, not wearing makeup, not acting dainty or prim. Not putting in effort is a rebellion to the status quo. It's evidence of the system's fragility, and trans people are proof of the system's limits. That a trans woman and a cis woman can put in equal time and effort into presenting femme and achieve similar results. I truly believe that most of the reason it might look or sound easier for a cis woman is because you are trained from birth to be a woman and therefore have a head start on trans women who transition later on in life. If you are one of my fellow gender woke comrades, it can be a little confusing to watch the reaction, because for a lot of us, gender is only one part of our lives and not the end-all be-all, and not something that anyone is attempting to force onto anyone else. No one is really trying to force femme Mike Johnson, and no one really wants to. It can be sometimes odd that they're so bent out of shape over gender when we're the quote-unquote gender people. And I think that's because when you are heterosexual and cisgender and operate within the conservative system, gender is everything. Beyond who gets power and respect and rights, it's what colors you wear, what foods you like, what your drink order is at the bar, how your house is decorated, the way you laugh, how hard you laugh, how you grieve, what dog breed is appropriate for you to own, what you smell like, the list goes on. I know that permission from me is not exactly consequential, but I feel the need to say flat out that if you are a man, you do not have to be violent, you do not have to be angry. You do not have to be tough. You can be gentle and tender and grow flowers as a hobby and drink strawberry daiquiris and play Scrabble, or do none of those things. And it doesn't make you not a man, it doesn't make you not heterosexual. I know there's immense pressure to conform to masculinity, but if it does not make you happy, you do not have to deny yourself the things that you enjoy in life or the way you like to be in service of it. And for my ladies, you do not have to be small, you do not have to be quiet or dainty or motherly or agreeable or young or emotional or innocent. I'm getting sort of sidetracked here, but my point is that great happiness is to be found in knowing yourself and knowing what you enjoy being and doing instead of bending and breaking to fit into the gender box. You don't have to be gay or trans or queer to do a little nonconformity. In many ways, the gender binary is just as restrictive for men even as it offers them power. Think of how men's fashion is notoriously more boring than women's fashion. This is because the bounds and rules of masculinity are so strict that it is very difficult to design anything remotely interesting without it reading as gay. So men's fashion is often much more monotonous and conformity-based. It's a rare instance wherein women have much more freedom in the way they dress and present themselves. Women can pretty freely dress more femme or more masked depending on their personal preferences, within certain boundaries. An excess of either is still regarded fairly negatively. See the gender tightrope from the shoujo video. It's worth mentioning, however, also, that the only reason women even have this much freedom of dress is because they fought tooth and nail for it for like a couple of centuries. It is my own personal sentiment that masculine dress is more restrictive because cishet men have not challenged it to the same extent that cishet women have challenged their own standards of dress historically, which I think is a combination of men's dress being typically more practical and comfortable than women's dress, and men's dress being associated with an identity that granted social power. I do think now that maleness is less of a social slam dunk these days, which is not to say that it has fully lost its power. It is prime time to challenge some masculine standards of dress, even if it's just by yourself, for yourself. To my cishet fellows in the audience, cute PJs are a wonderful thing, or some fluffy bunny slippers. Trust me on this one. Part 2, gay marriage. Little PSA for the start of this. The reason gay marriage was and is a big deal and why we fought for it for so long was that a lot of legality is tied to being someone's spouse. Shocker. Queer people didn't necessarily care about the institution of marriage for the sake of it, but for the fact that if your partner is in the hospital and you're not married, and then the doctor taps their homophobic family who disowned them for medical decisions, that's not exactly a recipe for a good time. Or you can't be on the same insurance, or you are blocked from their estate if they pass away by aforementioned homophobic family. Or the fact that it's much harder for a non-married couple to adopt if you want kids. All of this became a very, very big issue during the AIDS crisis when many gay people died and lost their partners. Marriage was a goal for the sake of legal protection and independence as well as equality, because even disowned, queer people were often still beholden to the nuclear family. The system is very dangerous for domestic abuse victims as well, because the person who put you in the hospital could also potentially control who has access to you. And so that's a whole other facet of that problem. But the end point here is that people should be able to choose for themselves who has visitation rights and who's on their insurance and who gets their things and their pension and whatever when they die. Shackling all of these things to marriage is a social and economic institutionalization of the heterosexual nuclear family. This system often puts aromantic people in a rough spot too, because the economic system is based around households and is more expensive to be single. Insurance costs more, cost of living is higher, rent is higher. It's hard to keep roommates long term when they keep moving out to live with their partners. The best solution aro people often have is to just find other aro people and live with them. And for the record, aro-ace people are part of the queer community full stop, which is why we're talking about them. So, overturning gay marriage is not symbolic. It very tangibly affects the legal rights of queer people. The lavender marriage is about to have a renaissance if this goes one of two ways. It's predicted to be unlikely to be overturned these days, but you really never know which of your rights might get taken away from you, so I'm still side-eyeing. Since writing this, the Supreme Court refused to hear the case to overturn gay marriage. So let's hear it for small victories, and fuck you, Kim Davis. Clarence Thomas unironically wants to make gay sex illegal, so I was worried for a minute. He said in his 2021 opinion on the case that overturned Roe v. Wade that we should also reconsider Lawrence v. Texas, a 2003 case in which people's consensual private sex lives are protected from being criminalized if it's between two consenting adults in a private residence. Clarence Thomas says he wants to reconsider that case under the same logic used to overturn Roe v. Wade. He dissented in the original 2003 ruling also. He thought making gay sex illegal was a little bit silly, but otherwise totally chill. Which, you know, crazy to think that people have gotten arrested and convicted for sodomy, or deviant sexual intercourse as they call it, as recently as 2003. That's really something. Sent to Yowie jail, the gay sex slammer. As disheartening as it can be at how recent that is, I would like to remind you all that it is also a symbol of the progress made and how much we've managed to change things in such a short time. So, another thing I want to build on here a little is what we explored in the World's Greatest Shoujo adaptation video, in which inferred personality traits based on external compliance with idealized gender standards affects people's idea of how virtuous you are. Example, the nuclear family. The inferred virtue from gender compliance rears its head here, and that doing the whole nuclear family bit means everyone involved is a good person, optically at least. A hard-working family man, a sweet, doting wife, the children with so much potential, the 2.5 kids and their future. They are doing gender and heterosexuality correctly and therefore must be virtuous. This is untrue, as lifestyle choices are often unrelated to virtue. But we see the whole, they had a family, they had a wife and a kid. Have we ever considered marriage is also a social construct? We made it up. And historically it has been a way of transferring ownership of women between men. Dowry, anyone? So, sanctity of marriage this, sanctity of marriage that. Being legally bound to the person you are in a sexual or romantic relationship with is an idea that we have invented on our own, and it's not part of nature. Why do you have to live with the person you are romantically involved with? Why do children have to be raised by a heterosexual couple who live together and are romantically involved? Why is it important to the children's well-being that their guardians are romantically involved with each other? Is that seriously the only way they could ever witness a healthy romantic relationship? Why can't they get that example somewhere else? Sometimes a family is 3 old ladies who are best friends and raising a daughter. Sometimes it's a gay man and a weird lesbian and an annoying dog. Sometimes it's 2 straight women who adopt a kid together. Sometimes it's a polyamorous homoerotic friendship between 4 guys studying architecture. Like, whatever, man. We are lonely because we limit our definitions of family and companionship so drastically and arbitrarily. Queer people are the patron saints of found family. They are the heavyweight champions of building community from scratch, and you should not be stripping away legal rights, you should be taking notes. If we're really upset about atomized society and a lack of community, we need to acknowledge all of the other ways that we have atomized ourselves even before our current compounding issues of the 21st century. If you're straight and you want to do marriage and that's like your thing, that's totally chill and cool, and like I will fight for your right to do that. But this is more so about that everyone should have a right to live their life their own way when they're not hurting people. They should be able to have families that are, you know, unconventional if that's what they want. They should be able to have the people who they consider family on their insurance or visiting them in the hospital instead of just, gay rights, basically. Anyways, join us next time when we talk about the other famous queer icon, Naruto.